The smell hit me first, sweet and rotten, seeping through the walls of apartment 4B. My neighbor Margaret had been dead for 11 days before anyone noticed. 11 days of lying on her kitchen floor while the rest of us walked past her door, complained about our problems, and lived our insignificant lives. I'm 69 years old, sick, and utterly alone in this building. I look at Margaret's empty apartment and see my future. Who will find me? Don't miss a single beat of the story. Hit that subscribe button right now, smash the like, share this with a friend, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Your double dose of my 10 p.m. stories awaits you every single day at 10 p.m. and 10 a.m. Getting old is terrifying, not because of the aches or the pills or the doctor appointments. It's terrifying because the world moves on without you, and one day you realize you're invisible. Doris Martinez is 69, battling chronic illness, living alone in a building full of strangers. When her neighbor dies undiscovered for nearly 2 weeks, Doris confronts her deepest fear, that she too will die alone, unmissed, rotting behind a locked door while life continues outside. I first noticed the smell on a Tuesday morning. I was taking my pills, the morning cocktail of blood pressure medication, cholesterol pills, and the anti-inflammatory for my arthritis, when something foul drifted through the thin walls of my apartment. At first, I thought maybe the building's plumbing had backed up again. This place, Riverside Manor Apartments, is 70 years old, with pipes that groan and leak and occasionally flood the basement. I'm Doris Martinez, 69 years old, living alone in apartment 4C on the 4th floor. I've been here for 12 years, ever since my husband Frank died and the house became too big, too full of memories, and too expensive to maintain on a teacher's pension. My hair has gone completely white, cut short because I can't lift my arms long enough to style it properly anymore. My hands shake from the medication, my knees barely work. Some days, getting to the mailbox feels like climbing Everest. Margaret lived in 4B, right next door. Margaret Chen, 82, tiny woman with silver hair always pulled into a tight bun. She walked with a cane, slowly, her spine curved from osteoporosis. I'd see her occasionally in the hallway, shuffling to the elevator, always alone. We'd nod at each other, that polite acknowledgement neighbors give when they share walls but not lives. The smell got worse over the next few days. By Thursday, it was undeniable. Something was dead, or dying, or rotting. I called the building manager, Tom, a heavy-set man in his 50s who always looked annoyed when residents called with problems. "There's a smell," I told him. "4th floor, it's bad." "Probably garbage chute," he said, barely listening. "I'll check it out." He didn't check it out. The smell intensified. By Saturday, I couldn't open my windows without gagging. By Monday, other residents were complaining. Mrs. Patterson from 4A, a woman in her 70s with dyed red hair and too much perfume. The young couple in 4D, always arguing, always slamming doors. Tuesday morning, 11 days after that first whiff, Tom finally knocked on Margaret's door. No answer. He used his master key. The scream brought us all into the hallway. Tom staggered out of Margaret's apartment, his face gray, his hand covering his mouth. He bent over the hallway trash can and vomited. Mrs. Patterson gasped, her hand flying to her chest. The young couple from 4D stood frozen in their doorway, eyes wide. I approached slowly, my walker clicking against the worn carpet. Through Margaret's open door, I could see into her small apartment, a mirror image of mine. The kitchen was visible from the entrance, and there, on the faded linoleum floor, was Margaret. She lay on her side, still wearing her pink bathrobe. Her walker had fallen beside her, one wheel still spinning slightly from Tom's entrance. Her face was turned toward the door, eyes open, mouth slack. Her skin had taken on a waxy, mottled appearance. Flies buzzed in the doorway. "Jesus Christ," Tom muttered, wiping his mouth. "Jesus Christ." He pulled out his phone with shaking hands. "Yeah, I need the police, and a coroner. Riverside Manor Apartments, 447 Oak Street. 4th floor. There's a body." The police came, then the coroner, then people in white suits went in and out of Margaret's apartment, carrying equipment, taking photos, documenting her death like it was a crime scene. Which I suppose it was, in a way. Not murder, just neglect. The crime of being old and alone and forgettable. A detective spoke to each of us. Detective Williams, a tired-looking black woman in her 40s with her hair pulled back severely, dark circles under intelligent brown eyes. She held a small notebook and asked questions in a flat, professional voice that barely masked her disgust. "When did you last see Miss Chen?" I thought about it. "Maybe 2 weeks ago? In the hallway?" We said hello. "Did she seem distressed? Unwell?" "She always seemed unwell. She was 82 and lived alone." Detective Williams wrote something down. "Did she have visitors? Family? Friends?" "Not that I saw. But I mind my own business." She moved on to Mrs. Patterson, to the young couple from 4D, to the other residents on our floor. Same questions, same answers. No one had really known Margaret. No one had noticed she was gone. The coroner's office estimated she'd been dead for 11 days. She'd fallen in her kitchen, hit her head on the counter. The impact had killed her almost instantly. Small mercy, the detective said. She hadn't suffered, she just died. And for 11 days, she'd lain there while the world continued around her. They took her body away in a black bag. Tom hired a cleaning service for her apartment, hazmat suits, and industrial chemicals. The smell lingered for weeks. I couldn't sleep after they took Margaret away. I'd lie in my bed, the same bed I'd shared with Frank for 43 years before cancer took him, and stare at the ceiling, listening to the building settle. Every creak made me think of Margaret's apartment next door. Empty now. Cleaned, but haunted. 11 days. That number echoed in my head like a death sentence. 11 days before anyone noticed she was gone. 11 days of decay and flies and silence. How long would I lie there if I fell? If my heart gave out? If I had a stroke? I started doing math. Morbid calculations I couldn't stop myself from making. The mailman comes Monday through Saturday, but I get mostly junk mail. He'd just stuff it in my box and move on. Tom does rounds maybe once a week, and only if there's a maintenance issue. I don't have visitors. My daughter Lisa lives in California with her husband and 2 teenagers. We talk maybe once a month. She's busy, I understand. My son Michael is in Boston, married to his career, no kids. He calls on my birthday and Christmas. Neither of them would notice if I didn't answer the phone for a few days. They'd assume I was busy, or tired, or that my phone was having issues again. I started timing how long it took people to notice I existed. I didn't collect my mail for 3 days. Nobody mentioned it. I didn't go to the first floor community room for the Tuesday morning coffee social I usually attended. Mrs. Patterson saw me in the hallway a week later. "Oh, Doris, haven't seen you at coffee," she said, barely pausing in her shuffle toward the elevator. I wasn't feeling well. "Oh, well, feel better." She was already moving on, all ready for bedding. 2 weeks. I could be dead 2 weeks before anyone would think to check on me. My doctor appointments became landmarks of visibility. Every 3 months, I see Dr. Patel for my blood pressure and cholesterol. Young man, maybe 40, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and an efficient manner that never quite crossed into warmth. He asks how I'm feeling, refills my prescriptions, and tells me to watch my sodium intake. "Any family nearby?" he asked during my last appointment, typing notes into his computer. "No, daughter in California, son in Boston." "Friends? Support system?" I laughed. It came out bitter. "I'm 69 and sick, doctor. My support system died with my husband." He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something flicker across his face. Pity, maybe, or recognition that I was describing his future patients, the ones who die alone and nobody notices until the smell alerts the neighbors. "You should consider joining some social groups. The senior center on Maple Street has activities, game nights, book clubs." "I don't drive anymore." "There's a bus." "I can barely walk, doctor." He went back to typing. "I'll note that in your file." 3 weeks after they found Margaret, I made myself go into her apartment. Tom had put it up for rent cheap because of what happened. Fully renovated, the listing said, which meant they'd ripped out the kitchen flooring and repainted the walls. The door was unlocked. Tom was showing it to a young couple, early 30s, the woman visibly pregnant, the man wearing a suit that said he worked downtown. They walked through the empty rooms while Tom gestured and talked about square footage and included utilities. I stood in the doorway, my walker providing stability my legs couldn't. The apartment looked nothing like Margaret's anymore. Fresh paint covered the walls, new flooring gleamed in the kitchen, laminate instead of linoleum, cheerful and impersonal. But the layout was identical to mine. Same small kitchen, same narrow bathroom, same bedroom barely big enough for a queen bed and dresser. "Did someone die here?" the pregnant woman asked suddenly, her hand on her belly protectively. Tom hesitated. He had to tell them, disclosure laws, but I could see him calculating how much to say. "An elderly tenant passed away. Natural causes. The apartment has been professionally cleaned and renovated." "How did she die?" the woman pressed. "She fell. It was quick." "How long was she here before someone found her?" Tom's jaw tightened. "A few days." "How many days?" 11, I said from the doorway. 3 faces turned toward me. 11 days before anyone noticed she was missing. Her name was Margaret Chen. She was 82. She died alone on that floor. I pointed to where Margaret had lain, where the new laminate now covered all evidence of her final moments. The woman's face paled. She tugged her husband's arm. "Let's go." They left quickly, the man muttering about Tom wasting their time. Tom glared at me. "Thanks a lot, Doris." They deserved to know. "It's been cleaned. It's perfectly safe. I need to rent this place." "You need to run it to someone who understands what it means to die alone." I turned my walker around, began the slow journey back to my apartment. Someone who won't let it happen to them. Tom's voice followed me down the hallway. "You're a real piece of work, you know that?" I didn't respond. I was too busy trying not to cry. Loneliness is a living thing. It grows inside you, feeding on silence and empty hours. Before Frank died, I never understood that. I was a high school English teacher for 37 years. I was surrounded by people, students, colleagues, parents. My classroom was always full of noise and life and drama. Then Frank got sick. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4 by the time they found it. 6 months from diagnosis to death. I took early retirement to care for him. Those 6 months were the longest and shortest of my life. Watching someone you love dissolve is a unique kind of torture. After he died, the silence hit me like a physical force. The house, our house, with its 3 bedrooms and big backyard and memories in every corner, became a mausoleum. I couldn't bear it. I sold everything. Moved into Riverside Manor, told myself it would be good to downsize, to simplify. When I really wanted was to be around people again. I thought an apartment building would mean neighbors, community, casual interactions that would ease the loneliness. I was wrong. Apartment living is anonymous. You share walls, not lives. You hear your neighbors' televisions and arguments and footsteps, but you don't know them. You don't matter to them. I tried to make friends. I went to the Tuesday morning coffee social in the community room, a depressing space with fluorescent lights and folding chairs and weak coffee from a 30-cup percolator. The same people came every week. Mrs. Patterson, who talked endlessly about her grandchildren, Mr. Kowalski from the second floor, a widower who smelled like cigarettes and spent the entire hour complaining about building management. The Hernandez sisters from 3F, both in their 70s, who spoke mostly Spanish to each other and smiled politely to everyone else. We weren't friends. We were just lonely people sitting in the same room, killing time until death. I stopped going after Margaret died. I couldn't sit in that room, drinking bad coffee, making small talk, pretending we weren't all just waiting for our turn to be found 11 days too late. My phone rarely rings. When it does, it's usually a robocall about my car's extended warranty or a scam about my non-existent Social Security problem. My children call on schedule. Lisa on the first Sunday of the month, Michael on the third. The conversations are brief, pleasant, and superficial.
How are you, Mom? Fine, honey. How are the kids? Busy with school. Sarah made the soccer team. Jake is applying to colleges already. Can you believe it? That's wonderful. And you? Staying healthy? Taking your medications? Yes, of course. Good. Listen, I have to run. We're heading to Sarah's game. Love you, Mom. Love you too. Click. Silence. I sit with my phone in my hand, wondering if they'd notice if I stopped answering, wondering how many scheduled calls I'd miss before they got worried. 2? 3? A month? The fear started small, then grew until it consumed everything. I'd wake up at 3 in the morning, heart pounding, convinced I was dying. I'd lie there in the dark, feeling my pulse, trying to breathe normally, terrified that this was it. The heart attack, the stroke, the aneurysm. Would anyone hear me if I called for help? The walls are thin, but would Mrs. Patterson next door wake up? Would she care? Or would she roll over, mutter about noisy neighbors, go back to sleep while I died alone in the dark? I started keeping my phone on my nightstand, fully charged, volume on high. I programmed 911 on the speed dial. I bought one of those medical alert buttons, the kind advertised during daytime television, where elderly people fall and can't get up. "I've fallen and I can't get up" used to be a punchline. Now it was my nightmare. The woman who sold me the device was cheerful, probably mid-20s, with glossy brown hair and a high ponytail, and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She demonstrated how the button worked, how I should wear it at all times, and how it would connect me to a call center 24/7. "Do you have family nearby?" she asked while filling out the paperwork. "No." "Friends who check on you regularly?" "No." "Well, that's what this is for." Her smile brightened, like she'd solved all my problems. "You'll never be alone now. Just press the button and someone will help you." Someone. A stranger in a call center somewhere, paid minimum wage to answer emergency calls from dying old people. That was my safety net. I wore the button. I hated it. It hung around my neck like a noose, a constant reminder that I was one fall away from Margaret's fate. But I wore it anyway, because the alternative was worse. The fear changed how I moved through my apartment. I became hyper-aware of every potential hazard. the bathroom mat that might slip, the corner of the coffee table that could catch my hip, the kitchen tile that was slightly raised, a tripping hazard I'd never noticed before Frank died. I started leaving the lights on at night. Not just the bathroom night light, but the kitchen light, the hallway light, the living room lamp. I needed to see clearly, to avoid the obstacles that could kill me. My electric bill doubled. I didn't care. I stopped cooking anything complicated. Too much standing, too many opportunities to fall. I lived on microwave meals and sandwiches and soup from cans. My doctor was worried about my weight loss. I didn't tell him it was because I was afraid of my own kitchen. I stopped showering daily. The bathroom was the most dangerous room. Slippery surfaces, hard edges, no one to hear me if I fell. I'd wait until Tuesday morning when I knew Mrs. Patterson would be home next door. I'd text her before I got in the shower. Taking a shower. If you hear a loud noise, please check on me. She never responded to the texts. I showered anyway, one hand gripping the safety bar Frank had installed years ago, moving carefully, frightened of every movement. This was my life now. Fear and caution and constant vigilance, waiting for the fall that would leave me like Margaret. Dr. Patel noticed the weight loss at my next appointment. I sat on the examination table in the thin paper gown that never quite covered enough, shivering in the over-air-conditioned room. He frowned at the stale reading, then at me. "Doris, you've lost 12 pounds since your last visit. I haven't been very hungry. Are you eating regularly?" "Yes." "What did you have for breakfast today?" I tried to remember. "Coffee? Toast, I think. Lunch yesterday. A sandwich? What kind of sandwich?" The questions felt like an interrogation. "I don't remember. Peanut butter, maybe?" He sat on his rolling stool, bringing himself to eye level with me. This was new. Usually he stood, typing notes into his computer, barely looking at me. Now he was looking, really looking, and I didn't like what I saw in his expression. He said, "I'm worried about you." "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You've lost weight, your blood pressure is elevated, higher than it's been in 2 years. You seem—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Anxious. Withdrawn. Tell me what's going on." "My neighbor died." "I'm sorry to hear that. They didn't find her for 11 days. Understanding flickered across his face. "And you're worried the same thing will happen to you. Wouldn't you be?" He was quiet for a moment, then stood and moved to his computer. "I'm going to refer you to a therapist, Dr. Sarah Mitchell. She specializes in anxiety and depression in older adults."
I'm not depressed. Maybe not, but you're clearly struggling. Therapy might help. Therapy can't change the fact that I'm alone. No, he agreed, but it might help you cope with that reality. And there are practical solutions we can explore. In-home health aides, daily check-in services, community programs. I can't afford an aide. My pension barely covers rent and medications. There are subsidized programs. Doctor, I cut him off, tired of his solutions. I appreciate what you're trying to do, but there's no fix for being old and alone and poor. That's just reality. He handed me a card with Dr. Mitchell's information. "Call her, please." I took the card, knowing I wouldn't call. Therapy cost money I didn't have, and it couldn't solve the fundamental problem. I was going to die alone, and no amount of talking would change that. This fear is real. This loneliness kills. Stay with me. Margaret's apartment stayed empty for 6 weeks. Then someone moved in. I heard the commotion in the hallway, furniture being moved, voices, the elevator running constantly. I looked through my peephole and saw young men in jeans and t-shirts carrying boxes and furniture. Later that afternoon, there was a knock on my door. I approached cautiously, walker clicking, and peered through the peephole. A young woman stood there.
maybe 30, with dark curly hair pulled into a messy bun, wearing paint-stained overalls. She smiled at the people. I opened the door. "Hi." She was aggressively cheerful, the kind of cheerfulness that young people have before life beats it out of them. "I'm Julia. I just moved into 4B. Thought I should introduce myself to the neighbors." "Doris," I said. "Nice to meet you, Doris. Sorry about all the noise today. Moving is such chaos." She gestured toward Margaret's apartment. No, Julia's apartment now. Margaret was gone, erased, replaced by this energetic young woman who probably had no idea someone had died there. I asked her what happened in that apartment. Her smile faltered slightly. "The landlord mentioned someone had passed away, but it's been completely renovated. An older woman, Margaret Chen. She fell and died. Nobody found her for 11 days. Her smile disappeared entirely. "Oh, that's terrible." "It is terrible. It's what happens when you're old and alone and nobody gives a damn about you. I'm sure people cared about her. Nobody cared enough to notice she was dead." An awkward silence stretched between us. Julia shifted uncomfortably. "Well, I just wanted to introduce myself. If you ever need anything, I'm right next door." "You won't check on me," I said flatly. "Nobody checks on me. In 6 months, you won't even remember my name." She looked hurt. "That's not fair. You don't know me." "I don't need to know you. I know how the world works. Young people don't care about old people. You'll be polite for a few weeks, then I'll just be the old lady next door who you avoid in the hallway." That's a pretty cynical view. It's a realistic view. I started to close my door. "Welcome to the building, Julia." I shut the door before she could respond, then stood there with my hand on the knob, feeling ashamed and angry and too tired to care which emotion won. It happened on a Thursday morning. I was getting out of bed, a process that took several minutes involving careful positioning and gripping the nightstand for support. My knees were especially bad that morning, swollen and stiff from the weather. It had rained the night before, and my joints always knew before the meteorologist when a storm was coming. I stood up, the world tilted, my vision blurred at the edges. I reached for my walker but misjudged the distance. My hand grabbed air. My knees buckled. I went down hard, my hip hitting the floor with a crack that might have been the floor or might have been my bone.
Pain exploded through my body. I lay there, stunned, trying to assess the damage. My hip screamed. My wrist throbbed. I'd tried to catch myself and bent it backward. My head had hit something on the way down, probably the bed frame. I tried to sit up. The pain in my hip made me cry out. Okay, not sitting up. Not yet. I looked around for my phone. It was on the nightstand, 3 feet away. It might as well have been a mile. My medical alert button was around my neck. I pressed it. "This is an emergency response. What is your emergency?" I fell. "I can't get up. I think I broke my hip." "Okay, ma'am. Stay calm. We're dispatching emergency services to your location. Do you need me to stay on the line with you?" "Yes." The woman on the other end, young voice, professional, probably reading from a script, talked to me while I lay on my bedroom floor. She asked about my pain level, my medical history, whether I was bleeding. I answered mechanically, part of my brain thinking about Margaret. How long had she lain on her kitchen floor? Did she press an alert button? Or did she die too quickly, too suddenly? No time to call for help. "Emergency services should arrive in approximately 8 minutes, the woman said. "Is there someone who can let them in?" "I don't know. Maybe the building manager?" "We'll have them access the building. Stay on the line with me." 8 minutes felt like hours. I lay on my floor, staring at my ceiling fan, counting the blades, rotating slowly, trying not to think about how I was going to get out of this apartment, down to an ambulance, into a hospital.
trying not to think about what came after the hospital. Physical therapy, rehab, or worse, a nursing home. The place where old people go to die slowly instead of quickly. Finally, I heard voices in the hallway, footsteps, a knock on my door. "Fire department, ma'am, can you hear us?" "In the bedroom," I called out, or tried to. My voice came out weak. More sounds, then Tom's voice. "I'm opening the door." 4 firefighters entered my apartment, bringing equipment and efficiency. They were gentle, professional, asking questions while they examined me. Young faces, all of them, probably none over 35. They looked at me with the tearful kindness reserved for broken things. "We're going to get you to the hospital," one of them said. A black woman with her hair in tight braids, kind brown eyes. "You're doing great." I wasn't doing great. I was lying on my bedroom floor, helpless, dependent on strangers. But I nodded anyway. The hospital was, as I remembered from Frank's illness, sterile, fluorescent, full of suffering disguised as efficiency. They took me to the emergency room, did x-rays, confirmed what I already knew, fractured hip. Not a complete break, but bad enough to require surgery. Dr. Walsh, the orthopedic surgeon, was maybe 50, with gray temples and the confidence of someone who'd done this procedure hundreds of times. He explained the surgery in terms I pretended to understand, showed me images of my hip on a computer screen, talked about recovery time and physical therapy. "You'll be in the hospital for a few days post-surgery, then we'll transition you to a rehabilitation facility for 2 to 3 weeks. I can't afford a rehab facility. Your insurance should cover most of it, Medicare, right? With a copay I can't afford." He frowned, made a note. "We'll have a social worker speak with you about financial assistance. The important thing is getting you healed." Surgery was scheduled for the next morning. They admitted me, put me in a room with a roommate, an elderly woman who moaned constantly behind her curtain. I lay in my hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the apartment I'd left in chaos. Had I locked the door? Turned off the stove? I hadn't planning to leave for the hospital. I'd been planning to make oatmeal and take my pills and watch the morning news like every other Thursday. My phone rang. "Lisa." "Mom, the hospital called us. They said you fell." "I fractured my hip. I'm having surgery tomorrow." "Oh my God. Are you okay? Why didn't you call me?" "It just happened this morning. I didn't want to worry you." "I'm your daughter. I'm supposed to worry." Her voice was strained. "Do you need me to come? I can get a flight." "No, don't. I'll be fine." "Mom." "Lisa, please. I'm tired. The surgery is routine. I'll call you after." "Promise?" "Promise." We hung up. I didn't tell her I was terrified, that the thought of surgery at my age, with my health problems, felt like a death sentence, that I was imagining all the things that could go wrong: infection, blood clots, complications from anesthesia, that I was imagining dying on the operating table, alone, with my last conversation being a lie about being fine. A nurse came to check my vitals. A young Filipino woman with a warm smile and cold hands. She adjusted my IV, asked about my pain level, gave me medication that made everything fuzzy. "Try to rest," she said kindly. "You've got a big day tomorrow." Rest. As if I could rest, knowing they were going to cut me open in the morning. I woke up in recovery, groggy and confused. A nurse, different from the one before, older, with tired eyes, checked my vitals and told me the surgery went well,
Dr. Walsh appeared briefly, still in his scrubs, to confirm everything had gone according to plan. "You did great," he said, as if I had any control over what happened while I was unconscious. "You'll have you up and walking with physical therapy in a day or two." Walking? That seemed impossible. My hip throbbed, despite the pain medication. Every slight movement sent shock waves through my body. How was I supposed to walk? They moved me to a regular room that afternoon. No roommate this time. Small mercies. The room had a window overlooking the parking lot. I watched cars come and go, families visiting their sick loved ones, and felt a fresh wave of loneliness. Nobody was coming to visit me. Lisa called that evening. "Mom, how did it go?" "Fine. Surgery went fine." "Are you in pain?" "Some. They're managing it." "I talked to Michael. We both want to come see you." "No." The word came out sharper than I intended. "I'm fine. You have work and the kids. Michael has his life. I don't need visitors."
Everything's under control. It wasn't under control. Nothing was under control. But I couldn't bear the thought of my children flying across the country, out of obligation, standing awkwardly in my hospital room, counting the minutes until they could leave. "If you're sure," Lisa said, doubt clear in her voice. "I'm sure." After we hung up, I cried. Not from pain, though my hip hurt. Not from fear, though I was terrified. I cried because I'd just lied to my daughter about needing her. And the worst part was, it felt easier than telling the truth. Physical therapy started the next day. A cheerful young man named Brandon with muscles that suggested he spent his free time at the gym helped me sit up, then stand, then take 2 agonizing steps with a walker. "You're doing great," he said enthusiastically. I wanted to hit him. Instead, I took another step, then another, each one an exercise in controlled agony. "That's it. 3 more steps, then you can rest." 3 more steps, 3 more eternities of pain. But I did it, because the alternative was staying in this hospital bed forever, or worse, a nursing home. "Same time tomorrow," Brandon said, helping me back to bed. "We'll try for 5 steps." After he left, I lay there exhausted, every muscle trembling. This was my recovery. Steps measured in single digits, progress measured in pain. They transferred me to Meadowview Rehabilitation Center 5 days after surgery. The name was misleading. There was no meadow, no view. Just a 3-story building in an industrial part of town surrounded by parking lots and strip malls. My room was small, institutional, depressing. Beige walls, linoleum floors, a bed with rails, a television bolted to the wall. The bathroom was accessible, grab bars everywhere, a shower chair, a raised toilet seat, everything designed for broken bodies. My roommate was Ethel, 93, recovering from a stroke that had left her partially paralyzed. She slept most of the time, making small sounds. That might have been dreams or pain. When she was awake, she stared at the television without seeming to see it. The staff was overworked and underpaid. They moved through their duties with practiced efficiency, checking vitals, administering medications, helping residents to the bathroom. They were kind enough, but kindness has limits when you're responsible for 30 elderly patients and paid barely above minimum wage. Physical therapy was 3 times a day. Brandon had been replaced by Janet, a stern woman in her 50s who believed in pushing patients hard. "Pain is progress," she'd say while forcing me to walk further each session, 10 steps, 15, 20. I hated her, but I also needed her. The other residents at Meadowview were in various stages of decline. Some were recovering from surgeries like me, temporarily broken but potentially fixable. Others were there indefinitely, waiting for nursing homes or death, whichever came first. At meals, served in a common dining room that smelled like overcooked vegetables and industrial cleaning products, I sat with the temporarily broken. We didn't talk much. What was there to say? We were all old, all hurt, all counting the days until we could leave or stop counting entirely. One woman, Ruth, had broken her hip 3 months ago. She'd been in rehab ever since, re-breaking it in a fall during physical therapy, resetting her recovery to 0. She was 74, gray-haired, hollow-eyed, and utterly without hope. "They'll move me to a nursing home soon," she told me one dinner, pushing mashed potatoes around her plate. "My insurance won't cover rehab much longer. My daughter says she can't take care of me." "I'm sorry," I said, because what else was there to say? "Don't be. This is what happens. We get old, we break, we become burdens. Then we disappear into places like this until we die." She looked at me with eyes that had seen too much. "You'll see. Even if you heal, you'll be back. Maybe not here, but somewhere like it. We all end up in these places, eventually." That night, I lay in my bed, listening to Ethel's labored breathing, and thought about Margaret. 11 days on her kitchen floor. Was that really worse than months or years in a place like this? At least Margaret's suffering had been brief. Julia visited me at Meadowview. I was shocked when the receptionist told me I had a visitor. Lisa and Michael hadn't come. I'd insisted they didn't need to. But Julia, my neighbor of barely 3 weeks, showed up on a Saturday afternoon carrying flowers and a stack of magazines. "Hi, Doris," she said, settling into the chair beside my bed. She wore jeans and a sweater, her curly hair loose around her shoulders. She looked young and healthy and completely out of place in this building full of dying people. "You came." "Of course I came. You're my neighbor." She set the flowers on my bedside table, bright yellow daisies that seemed to mock the beige depression of my room. "How are you feeling?" "Like I'm 70 years old with a broken hip." "That bad, huh?" She smiled, trying to lighten the mood. "When do you get to go home?" "Another week, if my insurance approves it. Then home health care for a while." "That's good." "Your apartment probably misses you." "My apartment is just walls and furniture. It doesn't miss anyone." Julia was quiet for a moment, then said softly, "I've been thinking about what you said, about Margaret, about dying alone." "Forget it, I was being dramatic." "No, you were being honest, and you were right, I didn't know you. But I'd like to, if you'll let me." I studied her face, looking for pity or obligation or whatever was motivating this gesture. But she seemed genuine. Young and naive, maybe, but genuine. "Why?" "Why what?" "Why do you care about an old woman you barely know?" She considered the question. "My grandmother died in a place like this. Nursing home, actually. Mom and Dad were too busy to visit much. I was in college, caught up in my own life. She died alone, and I didn't even make it to the funeral because I had finals." Her eyes grew wet. "I think about that a lot. How she must have felt. Forgotten." "So this is guilt?" "Maybe. Partly. But also," she leaned forward, "also because everyone deserves to have someone check on them. Everyone deserves to matter to somebody." "That's idealistic." "Maybe. But I'm going to check on you anyway. When you get home, you can be as cynical and mean as you want. I'll still knock on your door." Against my will, I felt something crack inside my chest. Not quite hope, but something close to it. They discharged me on a Tuesday morning.
Julia picked me up in her beat-up Honda, helping me into the passenger seat with the patience of someone who understood that movement was no longer simple for me. The ride home was quiet. I watched familiar streets roll past, wondering how long I'd been gone. 3 weeks? It felt like years. The building looked the same. Julia helped me to the elevator, up to the 4th floor, into my apartment. It smelled stale. Dust had settled on every surface. My plants, the few hardy succulents I kept on the windowsill, were brown and dying. "I'm sorry," she said, seeing my face. "I should have watered them." They were dying anyway. She helped me to the couch, then busied herself opening windows, tidying up, putting away the pile of mail that had accumulated. Home health care would start tomorrow. A nurse would come 3 times a week to check on me, help with bathing, make sure I was taking my medications properly. "Do you need anything before I go? Groceries, medications?" "I'm fine." "Doris." She sat on the coffee table, facing me. "You're allowed to need help. You're allowed to not be fine. And you're allowed to have your own life instead of babysitting a dying old woman." "I'm not babysitting." "I'm a neighbor. There's a difference." She pulled out her phone. "I'm giving you my number. Text me if you need anything. Anything at all. I mean it." She programmed her number into my phone before I could protest, then left, promising to check on me tomorrow. I sat on my couch in my dusty apartment, looking at Julia's contact information glowing on my screen, and felt something I hadn't felt since Frank died. Not quite hope, but not quite despair either. Something in between. Something like possibility. 6 months later, I'm still here. Still alive. Still alone, but less alone than before. Julia checks on me 3 times a week, sometimes more. We have coffee together on Saturday mornings. She helps me with grocery shopping. She texts me good night every evening. A simple, sleep well, that means someone knows I'm alive. It's not much, but it's everything. My hip healed, mostly. I walk with a cane now instead of a walker. Progress, Janet would say. I can shower alone. I can cook simple meals. I'm not the person I was before the fall, but I'm also not as broken as I feared I'd become. Mrs. Patterson died 2 months ago. Heart attack in her sleep. Tom found her when she didn't answer her door for 3 days. 3 days, not 11. Is that progress? I don't know. I went to her funeral, a sparse gathering of distant relatives who hadn't visited while she was alive, but showed up to divide her belongings after she was dead. I looked at her coffin and thought about Margaret, about all the elderly people dying alone in apartments and hospitals and nursing homes, about how we've built a society that warehouses old people until they become inconvenient, then forgets them entirely. I'm 69 years old. I have chronic health problems. I will die someday, maybe alone, despite Julia's kindness. But I've made a choice. I won't die invisible. I won't disappear without anyone noticing. I volunteer now at the senior center Dr. Patel recommended. 2 days a week, I sit with other elderly people who have no visitors. We play cards, we talk. We exist together instead of separately. It's not revolutionary. It won't change the fundamental loneliness of aging. But it means when I die, someone will notice. Someone will remember my name. Julia helped me clean out Margaret's apartment. The landlord had finally boxed up her remaining belongings after no family claimed them. We found photos of Margaret as a young woman, beautiful and smiling, surrounded by people who presumably loved her. We found letters from friends who died or moved away. We found a life that had slowly emptied until there was nothing left but an elderly woman, alone, in apartment 4B.
"This won't be you," Julia said, holding a photo of young Margaret. "I won't let it." "You can't promise that." "No, but I can promise I'll try, and that's more than nothing." She's right. It's more than nothing. It's a young woman checking on an old woman. It's a neighbor becoming something like family. It's the smallest possible resistance against the loneliness that kills us slowly, invisibly, one forgotten person at a time. I'm still afraid. I probably always will be. Every pain, every dizzy spell, every moment of weakness reminds me that I'm one fall, one stroke, one heart attack away from Margaret's fate. But I'm learning to live with fear instead of letting it consume me. This morning, I woke up to a text from Julia. "Coffee later? I have croissants." I replied, "Yes, and for now, that's enough."
Doris Martinez lives alone, but she's learning she doesn't have to die alone. Margaret's death was a warning, not a prophecy. Sometimes the difference between invisibility and being seen is one person who decides you matter, one neighbor, one check-in, one promise to remember your name. If the story touched you, stay with me for the next one. Tap subscribe, hit like, share it with someone who would feel it, and leave your thoughts in the comments. My 10 p.m. stories arrives every day at 10 p.m. and 10 a.m., so you're always caught up.